this video, we're covering all of the foramen, fissures, and canals of the human skull so that you are better prepared for your exam. And be sure to check out that skeletal series playlist where I cover all the bones and their structures. The link is down below in the description. So first, we're going to quickly review the differences between the foramen, canals, and fissures. Foramen are short passage or openings within the skull. They can be oval or circular in shape. Canals tend to be deeper openings in the skull, such as the carotid canal, which we'll cover in a second. Think of a canal as a deep cave. And finally, we have fissures, which are elongated openings. And we'll start first by showing you guys the two fissures of the skull. There are only two fissures of the skull, and they are both found within the orbits. This one's the superior orbital fissure and the inferior orbital fissure. Also note that the inferior orbital fissure can be found on the inferior view of the skull here, and the superior orbital fissure can be found from the superior view of the skull here. Moving on to the canals of the skull, there are 6 of them that you'll likely need to locate, and we'll start here with the anterior view of the skull with the optic canal, where the optic nerves travel through from the eye to the brain. You can also see this canal from the superior view here. Next, we have the external acoustic canal, which is also referred to as the external acoustic meatus. And this canal leads to the ear cavity. The internal acoustic canal, also known as the internal acoustic meatus, is here within the cranial cavity. Notice that the canal here on this model is closed, but on most models there should be an opening. Next, we have the carotid canals located here from the inferior view of the skull. We also have the hypoglossal canal located just below the occipital condyles, where the hypoglossal nerve, also known as cranial nerve 12, travels through. From the superior view, it can be located just lateral to the large opening known as the foramen magnum, which we'll cover in a second. As for the final canal, we have the condylar canals, which sit just below the occipital condyles. And you can also find it from the superior view here. Now, before we move on to the foramen of the skull, be sure to hit that like button and hit that subscribe button if you want to see more educational content like this. So now, taking a look at all of the foramen, we'll start here with the anterior view of the skull. So looking at the orbits, just above the orbit, we have the supraorbital foramen, and below the orbit, we have the infraorbital foramen. Supra meaning superior to, and infra meaning inferior to. Also note that the supraorbital foramen is sometimes referred to as the supraorbital notch. Moving on to the mandible, we have these openings called the mental foramen. From the posterior view of the mandible, we have these openings called the mandibular foramen. Both the mental and mandibular foramen allow nerves and blood vessels to innervate and supply nutrient-rich blood to the lower gums. From the superior view of the skull, we have these small openings on the ethmoid bone called the olfactory foramina. They're depicted here as black dots. Foramina is plural for foramen. On the sphenoid bone, we have 4 foramen, and you can use the term Ros-L to help you recall them. R is for foramen rotundum, O for foramen ovale, S for foramen spinosum, and L for foramen lacerum. Next, we have the very obvious foramen magnum, and just lateral to the foramen magnum, we have the jugular foramen, which is where cranial nerves 9 through 11 travel through. And finally, from the inferior view of the skull, we'll start with the sphenoid bone. Here we have foramen ovale, foramen spinosum, and foramen lacerum. Notice that foramen rotundum cannot be seen from this view. Next, we have the jugular foramen, which again, it's just lateral to the foramen magnum, but from this view, it is slightly more hidden and sits just below the occipital condyles. And last but not least, we have the stylomastoid foramen, in which, like its name, sits just between the styloid and mastoid processes. Well done, guys. Now that you know every single foramen on the skull, you are now ready to watch the practice quiz video. You can click on it here on the upper right-hand corner, and it comes with a free PDF document that has all the questions on there. Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, and subscribing. Continue studying, continue doing great things, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.